clear some stuff, at least try to clear some stuff up on this Quarterback Monday. I hope you'll hear me out, up to and including if we don't happen to agree on a football thing. Good morning to you. Good Monday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Daily Shot of Steelers. It comes your way bright and early every weekday. If you're into hockey and or baseball, I also offer daily shots of Penguins and Pirates, the other two teams in town that I cover, the same place that you heard this. And I hope you'll take the time to check those out as well. Mason Rudolph's been in town for a few weeks now. As I've reported already, he's been part of the team's ongoing OTAs and other workouts on the south side. That's not an exceptional thing in and of itself, and I'm not citing it as that. It's a purely voluntary exercise, and if I was going to rip on one person for not being there, then I'd also have to rip on TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, Minkah Fitzpatrick, George Pickens. It's a long list of people who don't partake in this. But Mason's been there, and that's pretty cool. This is an important year for him, regardless of which way Aaron Rodgers decides to go. Meaning Mason's either going to be QB1 or he's going to be QB2 behind a QB1 who's going to turn 42 years old during the coming season. One way or the other, you would think Mason's going to get as much action as he's gotten in any NFL season his entire career. So you'd want him to embrace that exactly the way you'd expect him to embrace that based on everything that Pittsburgh knows about him. But I also like that, he's taken the time since he's been around to do some community things. He's also been to a Pirates game. He's been to a Penguins game. Yesterday, he and Beanie Bishop were volunteer participants in helping out with the Pittsburgh Marathon that ran through all of our streets. A TV crew stopped him at one of these marathon stations. Mason said, being back in the city of Pittsburgh, it's a sports town like no other. Anytime we get to repay that, it's always a fun opportunity. He never wanted to leave, as I told you at the time, and he was thrilled at the opportunity to come back. Now, this gets me to my broader point, or points, I should say. I have a couple. The first is this. Contrary to some perception that seems to exist based on the feedback that I get to this program, if and when Rodgers signs with the Steelers, I'm not about to cancel the show and run off to northern Alaska and live in a Wi-Fi free cottage with just me and the polar bears for all eternity. I'm going to live with it. I'm going to be okay with it. And I'm going to cover it fairly, honestly, the same way that I would hope you would expect me to cover anybody or anything related to any of the teams that I follow. If you don't believe that, then there's a really, really good chance you're new to my work, and that's fine. I appreciate your being here. Said this a million times. I don't hate the guy. I don't know the guy. I've never met him. If I've ever even asked him a question in an interview setting, I don't recall it. And then others bring up politics and his personal stuff. And listen, I'm not particularly proud of this, but I don't even know about that. Okay? It's not of interest to me. My job is to cover Pittsburgh teams and the athletes who perform for those teams. He has never been one of those, and I'm not going to waste my time or anybody else's digging into the background of somebody who might not be here. I just really am not interested. All right, so we have that one out of the way. Here's another one. Meaning my other point that's related to this. I wonder to what extent it'll impact the Steelers over the course of the 2025 schedule that I think, unless I'm really misreading this badly, that this city likes Mason a lot and wants Mason to be the starter. And as such, if something were to go wrong with the offense in the early going under Rodgers, even if it's not his fault, if it's the line being brutal, if his receivers are dropping all his passes, if the play calling is abysmal, whatever the actual thing is, you know and I know when you're watching an offense, you're almost invariably going to be thinking first and foremost about the quarterback's play. And if that happens here in this city where we reflexively, we don't just love our backup quarterbacks, we want them all to be the next mayor. Again, going off my vibes here in Pittsburgh, physically inside our city limits, county limits, region, however it is that you would choose to draw a circle around the Golden Triangle, what I hear from is people who really fell for Mason based on what he did late in the 2023 season, and especially for what he did right there in Acrisure Stadium, that unforgettable Christmas game. They got attached. They liked the impact that he had on the rest of the team. And they believed in the whole, underdog, he didn't get his chance before story, especially after watching other guys get all kinds of opportunities ahead of him. And then he finally gets his, and he's the first and only one to seize it. That's a pretty relatable story. Now, I don't get the same sense from those who aren't here. And I'm really, really not understanding that. In fact, I kind of get the sense that it's the opposite among the expats or even people who've never been to Pittsburgh. There's a lot of Steelers fans, by the way, wouldn't even be able to find Pittsburgh on a map. Kind of similar to how people here wouldn't be able to find necessarily Manchester, England on a map, but root their lungs out for Manchester United when watching their soccer matches. But I'll reiterate, I don't get that. I don't get the why. I don't get what the distinction there would be. Other than, and I guess this is possible since Mason's been here. Like, he's been here in Pittsburgh for a few years now. Even though he didn't necessarily play all the time, he's been here. He's been a physical, visible presence. But it'll be interesting. Look, this whole thing is going to be interesting no matter how it turns out. But in the event it turns out that Rodgers does come here, and Rodgers obviously would be the starter's choice because they wouldn't even be making this effort if he wouldn't be. How will the citizenry here respond to that when we come back? J1Q. Luxenberg, Garbett, Kelly & George is a personal injury law firm in Western Pennsylvania that represents injured people in automobile accidents, workers' compensation cases, and medical malpractice claims. The attorneys at Luxenberg, Garbett, Kelly & George pride themselves in doing what they say they're going to do. It's important to them that when they make you a promise, they keep that promise. And this law firm has been keeping promises for over 80 years. Luxenberg, Garbett, Kelly & George has been AV rated. That's the highest rating a law firm can receive for legal ability and ethics. And the lawyers at the firm have been designated super lawyers, that's a real thing, for over 15 years. Rare combination there. Luxenberg, Garbett, Kelly & George has offices in Cranberry, Newcastle, Beaver Falls, Butler, and Elwood City. Learn more about them at lgkg.com or by calling 888-842-5454. Again, that's 888-842-5454. Today's J1Q comes from Matt, who says, DK, it's odd how so much of the media coverage of the Steelers of late appears to focus on either Aaron Rodgers or George Pickens, who don't care to be here. And yet there was very little over the weekend on Mason Rudolph and Beanie Bishop being in attendance and rooting on the participants in the Pittsburgh Marathon. It's a sad commentary on our support of players who are spoiled brats as opposed to players who are involved in our community right here in the city. I wish Rodgers and Pickens would go away. There's a lot I could tackle here, Matt, and at the same time, nothing definitively, because what you're expressing is your opinion and you're entitled to it, and I respect it. I've already said what I wanted to say about Rudolph and Bishop and their participation in the marathon. As it relates to Rodgers and Pickens, I'm going to reiterate strongly, okay, that the current workouts, as wonderful it is to have people there, are voluntary. And I'll double up on that in Rodgers' case, since he's not even signed to a contract. So he is technically not a Steeler and wouldn't even be allowed to partake in this thing if he wanted to. I mean, I get your point. You wish that he'd make up his mind and sign or not sign, but I'm just being technical here. And as far as Pickens, look, Pickens is making some headlines because every time he puts something on social media, everybody gets all into it because it's George and we're fascinated by George because he's different, he's volatile. Oh, and also he happens to be extraordinarily talented. And as a result, he's important. He's extra important to the Steelers. Over this weekend, George put up some pictures of his fellow wide receivers who are at this camp. Actually, I just call it a camp. It's not even a camp. It's OTAs. It's organized activities. And it was a montage of a bunch of wide receivers from the Steelers' official photographer, the one we've been talking about lately. And the caption that George attached to it was, "Keep grinding, fam." Is that newsworthy? Well, I mean, we put a little entry up on it on our site, and a lot of people talked about it. Is what Rodgers says and does newsworthy? Yeah, every time there's something, we follow suit, put something up on our site. Now, where you're going to lose me is asking me to get into media coverage and stuff, because I'm going to be honest with you, I have no idea who covered what. I spent my weekend either A, covering the Pirates across the river, or B, locked into two of the best Game 7s the NHL has ever enjoyed in the history of the Stanley Cup playoffs. So I wasn't parsing whoever it is that covers the Steelers. But I do appreciate your feedback, and I appreciate, heck, you're giving me an opportunity here to share with everyone exactly what I was talking about in the opening segment. Mason's made some fans here. Mason's got some believers here. And a lot like yourself, there are going to be people who will not want the other guy to succeed. And there's no setting in which that isn't potentially disruptive. I appreciate the question, Matt. I appreciate everybody listening to Daily Shot of Steelers. Don't forget, we have a double shot of Steelers coming your way at 4 p.m. Eastern. That's our live video program that you can find on both YouTube and, of course, on DKPittsburghSports.com. Thanks so much for listening to this one. We'll be back with another one tomorrow morning.